Welcome to Dory Cote on Shamanism, a weekly podcast that explores one theme in shamanism throughout each month. Get comfortable, have a seat, and let's get started.
Welcome to the beginning of this month's topic, which is about creating tribe. This week's podcast is going to be really more a discussion about, well, what is tribe and how do we work with tribe? What do we mean in shamanism about tribe?
Dory, what does tribe mean to you?
Well, that's a good question, and I have been pondering it for some time, recognizing that I wanted to do this podcast on the topic of tribe, realizing that my understanding of tribe has changed a lot in the last few years. I believe that I came from a place where many of us in the Western world come from, and that is this understanding or this thought that tribes are typically, indigenous people who live in what we call a tribal community. And so if we look deeper and say, okay, well, what is a tribal community? It's a community of people who live together and who support each other in a common cause, which is the survival and the happiness and the full bellies and the built homes and the raising of children and the making of decisions in a community manner. Even though, there may be a leader, there is an overall community participation in decisions and in all activities. So that's where I came from. And now, I've evolved over time to musing and seeing and understanding that tribe really goes beyond the communities that we think of as being particularly made up of indigenous peoples, whether they're modern day indigenous peoples living in a tribal community or whether they are more ancient tribal communities. The understanding I have now is that a tribe is any group of people who come together for the sake of a common purpose, and regardless of their individual personalities or age or religious or spiritual background, have something in common and a goal that they are working on together. And sometimes they live together and sometimes they don't. And so I want to talk a whole lot more in this series of podcasts about what is tribe and what makes up a tribal community. What are some of the possibilities of what makes tribe, and why is tribe, the making of tribe or a being in a tribe, an important thing for us of all colors, of all nations, regardless of our background or our understanding of what tribe has been in the past to us.
It has been said that when soldiers go to war, they create a tribal community. Does that ring true from your shamanic perspective and your definition of tribe?
Well, it does. And the unfortunate truth, of course, is that when soldiers go off to war, they are coming together as a tribe for the purpose of being in war, which is, in combat. The truth, however, is that in the life of a soldier, whether American soldier or European soldier or a Middle Eastern band of soldiers, everyone comes together again for the sake of a common purpose, and that is, quote, defeating the perceived enemy. And when soldiers come together in that way, they are living together, they're eating together, They may, again, come from different races, different age groups, different religious backgrounds, but yet they create a cohesive group that has a common goal, and that is surviving, having each other's backs, hoping that everybody survives the combat or the place where they are together. And because they share such intimate time living together, many men and or women together in close quarters, sharing what is typically not very good food, creating ways to survive, being in an unusual environment together, they create tribe. And I want to talk about this more as we go on in these podcasts, because one of the difficulties I see and have been reading about is that because they create tribe, it is truly, truly difficult for the combatants, the soldiers, to come back from that environment and back into, particularly in American culture that is so divided and so not connected, not working towards common goals, that the integration of the soldier back into the American culture is challenging and likely a contributing cause to rampant suicides, depression, PTSD, and many other things that have been happening to our soldiers. So coming out of a tribal community and returning to a non-tribal community is inherently riddled with many, many challenges that are not seen or observed by most people.
So as I'm listening to you, I'm hearing a difference. I'm thinking about family,
Mm-hmm.
and some families are tribes.
Yes.
Or there are tribes within families. Some families can do family reunions and get 30 people with one phone call. Some people can bring 300 once every 10 years, and some people can only get 3 together and really are not a tribe. They're genetically related. Though they have lived together, they have the common purpose of surviving. What's the difference there?
Well, as I see it and have come to understand, the difference is particularly in our American culture that the family structure has really pretty much broken down. What used to be a commonplace, tightly knit family where people sat down to dinner together every night, regardless of where they had to go during the day. There was always meal together. There was celebration together. There was a commonality within the core of the family. And families lived close to one another. If you grew up in a certain community in the United States, whether it was in Indiana or California or Maine or New Jersey, your cousins and your aunts and uncles and all of those people lived someplace nearby, and as a result, everybody got together for the 4th of July and other family events. That isn't happening anymore because we have scattered all over the globe. Families, somebody goes off to college far away. They often don't come back to their own family roots. They move for a job across country. They still have some connections, but it is not that same kind of tribal connection that occurred. Really, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it really all comes down to the heart. Can people live far away from each other and still be part of a tribe? Probably yes, but it implies that there is strong bonds that were built during early years together, and continue beyond the need for separation from one another, from the physical separation.
A family can be part of a clan, but not necessarily have the qualities of tribe that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Many Americans, Native Americans, still live in tribal culture, and many non-Native Americans and people dream of living in a tribal culture and lifestyle. Why do you think that is? What are they missing or yearning for?
I believe what people are missing and yearning for is that community, that deep sense of being a part of the natural world in a very power-filled, powerful way, and living in a culture or a community where people come together for a common purpose, where decisions are made in circles, where there is a lot of celebration, where there is a lot of ceremony, where there is a lot of ritual, where people are acknowledged for who they are, even given names that describe the nature of who they are. And in our American culture in particular, because I'm American, I can speak from that place, of course, far more than I can about European culture or Middle Eastern culture or other cultures. But in American culture, there is so much brokenness that that sometimes people will live within the same household and don't even speak to each other. There's no acknowledgement of the individual. There's no understanding of even who this child is, as opposed to who that child is, as they grow up and they go out into the world. And there's a lot of energy that comes from outside of the family that breaks the family core up. So I believe people dream about living in those kinds of environments because the pressures of living in the culture that we live in right now are so great that tribal culture, in the way that we have that vision, is enticing to us. It's a way of thinking, oh, I could go live in the woods and I could be a part of this culture where we grow our own food and we hunt for our own meat and we make decisions together and we build our homes together and we unplug from all media and we live a life off the land. That's why I think it happens in today's culture. Now, from some reading that I've been doing lately, I have been learning that, in fact, during the settlement of the United States by white people, during the wars and the rampant genocide, really, of the native peoples of America, when somebody was captured by native people and brought into their tribal communities, 4 out of 5 statistically, when, quote, freed from their native captors, did not want to leave. They wanted to stay in that native tribal community because it was a place where they were seen, where they were accepted, where they got to live in harmony within the community and got to experience the beauty of living close to the natural world and the ways in which decisions were made and the ways that each human individually was honored. And so even back in the early 1700s, we had people who did not want to leave tribal cultures. And then there were also soldiers and other white people who defected and left to go live with the native people just because it was so enticing and so appealing to them to be in a tribal community, one in which people are very close. They really know each other. They have fun. They do ceremony. They work really hard together. Their survival depends upon each other. And they cling to one another through storms. They cling to one another through disease. They cling to one another through all kinds of trials and tribulations. They are of utmost importance to each other. And so that was very attractive to a lot of people, a lot of the settlers. And some people left their settlements and went to live with the native people and stayed there forever until death. And others who had been captors chose not to leave. 4 out of 5. Pretty amazing.
It is. It is. They must have experienced deep connection.
Yes, that's what I perceive, and what I've been reading is that there was such a depth of connection that they did not want to leave it.
And these were not necessarily genetic family connections, especially in this case.
No, they were not genetic family connections. In fact, most of the people who chose to live in these Native American tribal communities, they were Europeans who had come here to America to settle, and then found themselves attracted to the native way of life as opposed to the more European, soon becoming American way of life.
Even though the colonialists were having to depend on each other for survival.
They were, and that's a really very interesting piece, I think, because the colonialists did have to depend upon each other. Their lives were really dependent upon each other, but they did not have the kind of community that thrived on shared responsibility and shared leadership.
And respect.
And ultimate respect, even though, you can read about Native cultures where women were, relegated to, what we would in today's world see as menial tasks. They were really revered for the work that they did and the part that they played in the ongoingness and the security of everyone in the tribe, whereas not so much so in the colonialists' history. They were far more demeaning to the women and far less accepting of each person having a really seriously important role and a decision-making capacity.
I'm sure as we go through the next 3 sessions, we will experience a deeper understanding of tribe.
Yes.
Is there anything for this session that you would like to add?
No, not at this time. I invite the listener to really tune in again to next week's podcast, because we're going to keep going deeper into this topic and explore more. Well, what is it that we can do as modern day people to create that sense of tribe within our own small circles or our own communities or families?
Thank you for listening to Dory Cote on Shamanism. We'd love to hear your thoughts, stories, reactions, and questions. Come on over to dorycote.com and join the conversation. And tune in next week for more on this subject, or next month for a new subject. You can subscribe to this podcast in iTunes or sign up on dorycote.com to receive notices when the podcasts are posted. That's Dory, D-O-R-Y, and Cote, C-O-T-E.com. Drumming and rattling by Dory Cote and Terry Morgan. Technical assistance and audio production by JillHackett.com. And this is Susan Savelle, wishing you many blessings in your life. We hope to have you join us next time.